The following program is a podcast1.com production.
Your healthy radio addiction starts now.
Power to the people!
The Laura Ingraham Show.
These are the same folks oftentimes who suggest that they're so tough that just talking to Putin or staring down ISIL or using some additional rhetoric somehow is going to solve the problems out there. But apparently they're scared of widows and orphans coming into the United States of America as part of our tradition of compassion. First they were worried about the press being too tough on them during debates. Now they're worried about 3-year-old orphans. That doesn't sound very tough to me.
I don't think he was meant for this job. You want to know the truth. The temperament is wrong. He wasn't angry at the killers, the murderers, the animals that did this horrible thing. It's not for him.
When Mike played that for me from Hannity last night, I said, I can't believe Trump's talking about Carson again. He's talking about Obama.
Yep.
Obama goes off overseas and decides, is he running for a third term? Didn't he sound like when he was over there in Europe, was he in the Philippines or was he in Turkey bad-mouthing the Republicans? Where was he?
Manila.
Manila, okay.
Yeah, Philippines.
So he's over there in the Philippines, and he sounds like he's actually running for a third term. A lot of people think he is running for a third term. I understand. A lot of people think he's never going to leave office. Gosh, don't frighten me with that thought. We have new raids in Paris today. Outside of Paris, 2 suspects have been killed, 7 arrested. A woman exploded herself, killing herself as she was about to be taken into custody, as officials believe that the mastermind behind the attacks could be in that vicinity. But apparently he wasn't killed in the raid, and he wasn't found in the raid. And Saint-Denis, and I don't know my French, so excuse my, please excuse my pronunciation. Well, I think we can all conclude that the President of the United States is much closer to representing a global cabal, almost like he's the regional director of a global cabal, versus the Commander-in-Chief of the United States of America, the President of the United States of America, who stands for all people. Our security and safety is paramount. It is his solemn obligation. And yet he acts like he is campaigning and it's 2007, 2008. He never stopped campaigning. So this man doesn't know how to lead. He knows how to community organize. He knows how to do that type of divisive approach to politics that, frankly, helped him stitch together this crazy quilt of supporters in 2008 and 2012. He knows how to divide people along racial lines. He knows how to divide people along gender lines, and I would say along religious lines, because I bet you there are a lot of people out there who are Jewish, Christian, atheist, maybe some other type of, maybe a Buddhist. I bet there are people from all different religious backgrounds and agnostics, throw them all in, who think what we are doing in letting in tens of thousands of people into this country under this umbrella of refugee status is madness. Absolute madness. You see what's happening in France today? They've been watching many of these people for months, and they've been able to evade surveillance. Many of these individuals were on watch lists, and they ended up killing 130 people. Still. And we're going to bring more people into the country whose provenance we cannot really determine?
They've been playing on fear in order to try to score political points.
Oh, you should know that
advance their campaigns. And it's irresponsible. And it's contrary to who we are. And it needs to stop because the world is watching.
Oh, the world leaders. So now we're getting down to business, sir. We know whose interest you're representing. The global interest versus the American understanding. I do not think we can trust these people given their posture on issue after issue, from border enforcement to the way they handle our asylum program, to the way they handled the evening of Benghazi, to what they did in Fast and Furious, to how they turned the IRS against innocent people, to how they lied about Obamacare, to how they've exploded the dependency culture in this country. Given all of that plus much more, we're supposed to trust their vetting and their belief that, oh, this is great. Look at the provision of the law, the refugee law. These people are going to be really well vetted. Who believes these people? We can't even believe them on a health care plan. And we're going to believe them on this? It was reported on one website, and I'm trying to confirm it, that after that little coffee table meeting with Putin the other day, where Obama pulled Putin aside and they sat down with Susan Rice. Can you imagine? Susan Rice is your top advisor dealing with Putin. What do you think Putin says? Look at old scrawny and Susan Rice. I mean, Susan, it was caused by a video Rice. What do you think Putin's looking at? Putin's looking at these people like, this is America now? Oh my gosh, my predecessors were terrified of Ronald Reagan. That was trust but verify. That was stare us down at Reykjavik Reagan. And now it's, oh, sir, can you meet us over at the coffee table? Can we have a little coffee table conversation? I thought we didn't want Putin to have the upper hand in Syria. I thought they're all laughing at Trump, saying, let Putin do this. Looks like Obama needs old Vladimir's help. Помоги мне, пожалуйста. Help me, please. Oh, excuse me, I'd use the formal. Помогите мне, пожалуйста. Help me, sir, please. Apparently, after the little meeting at the coffee table, it was ridiculous. It was like they were just in a restaurant. So, come over here and meet with me. And they're sitting around this little coffee table in full view. Putin gets up, and he says, this is according to this one report, Putin gets up, and he's pointing over to Obama, who's then getting a photo with that thug president of Turkey. Okay, that Erdogan. And he's look at this guy smiling with Erdogan over this. It's ridiculous. And he says, a little child. That was his comment about Obama. This is according to one report. It's similar to what we've heard in other reports, what Putin said about Obama. And then remember, even Sarkozy. Remember Sarkozy, the leader of France? He also had a comment about Obama that was very, critical. Again, the man who came forward and said, I am a citizen of the world, and I apologize for everything we've done to you. The apology tour and all this. He was much more, I think, well-positioned to be a global organizer of sorts, rather than be an American president. What the country's hungering for, I believe, is an American president. I'm not talking about birth, where he's born. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the credibility you come to the table with when you talk about these issues of security, when you talk about these issues of prosperity and focus and enforcement and race and all the things you want to throw together. This man has zero credibility. And when you don't have credibility for standing for the American interest first, not some idea of what it means to be a noble global citizen, but to be an American leader. If that is your primary responsibility, you don't laugh at governors. You don't go overseas and laugh at the governors of these great states of ours. You stand up and you talk about what America's interest is in the world. You don't start ridiculing good governors who stand for their people, even when you don't stand for us. I'm sick of that. Absolutely sick of it. Now, all the punditry should be in place only if you want a television show on MSNBC after the presidency. He joked about wanting to own an NBA team recently, right? In an interview with GQ. Be fun to own an NBA team. Well, I suggest when you're the owner of an NBA team, you'd probably fight for that team's interest. You'd probably fire people who were incompetent as an NBA owner or general manager. You don't keep a coach in after the coach screws things up time and again. But these people don't know how to fire anyone, because the first person fired under that scenario would be himself. Well, to take a break. I'm sorry, I'm getting hot about this because I have never in my life witnessed an American president going overseas trashing the people of his own country. You don't think these governors represent the American people, sir? 52% of Americans in the poll yesterday said they think allowing in refugees makes this country more vulnerable and unsafe. We expect this. We expect this of other world leaders, to ridicule American leaders, ridicule American governors. We heard that from the Mexican president a few years ago when he came here to make fun of Arizona, for Arizona standing up for its own people on immigration. And I remember the Mexican president was feted at the White House, having trashed the American state. Jan Brewer and the whole crowd trashed by a Mexican leader. And we told you at the time, anyone in Congress who stood and applauded for a Mexican president coming to our country and trashing one of our governors shouldn't be in office. Go to Mexico and run for office if that's what you want to do, but stop trashing your own leaders overseas or allowing other leaders to come here and trash us. We've taken in enough of Mexico's problems. We don't need to take in the Muslim world's problems. $2 trillion and thousands of young men and women across this country have sacrificed. And our taxpayers have sacrificed. You know what they get for it? They get trashed overseas by our own president. Your reaction, 855-40-LAURA.
I thought I was close, but under further inspection, it seems I've been running in the wrong direction.
It needs to stop because the world is watching.
Why is there a constant effort to underplay the significance of the threat from ISIS?
You know, if you're really digging this show and you want to find out more, like behind-the-scenes stuff or a few secrets that never hit the air?
No. Yes.
You can do it by following us at Podcast One on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. That's at Podcast ONE. If you do that, you'll stay up to date between all the episodes and get a look behind the scenes. You'll get photos, videos, extras, and a whole lot more. So join the Podcast One community on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Just follow us at Podcast One. That's at Podcast ONE. And don't forget to tag us or use the hashtag Podcast One so we can write back to you.
I find out that everybody talks. It started with the whisper.
We should focus our efforts as it relates to the refugees for the Christians that are being slaughtered.
When candidates say we wouldn't admit 3-year-old orphans, that's political posturing. When individuals say that we should have a religious test and that only Christians, proven Christians, should be admitted, that's offensive and contrary to American values. I cannot think of a more potent recruitment tool for ISIL.
Okay, so it's a recruitment tool for ISIL for us to stand up for our own national security, our own security at home. Then let's just open all the borders. Let's bring ISIL in here and bring all these people in here, and then we'll just fight them on the streets of the United States of America as you disarm us and buy up all the bullets so people can't buy any ammunition. We saw that a couple of years ago, right? Let's make sure we bring as many people here as possible. Trust international vetters. Who's vetting the vetters? Who's vetting these vetters? Do you trust these vetters? I know one thing. They trusted a lot of these people who worked in baggage handling and the mechanics at the Russian airline that ended up coming down because they ended up getting a bomb on that plane. They trusted. Oh, let's trust. We have to trust. We have to have a multicultural approach to TSA, to baggage handling, to all. We've got to be politically correct even if it kills us. Because the world is watching, Obama said. You bet I'm standing up for Jeb Bush. I'm glad he said what he did. He might be a little bit more liberal on this issue than I am, but not by much. He's been pretty good on this. Ted Cruz has been fantastic on it. I think Chris Christie was told he wasn't notified even by the refugees coming into that state. And it's contrary to American values for American governors to care about their own states more than they care about whether the Harvard faculty is upset. Or whether the New York Times is going to say, oh, this is contrary to our values. Or whether Mika Brzezinski is upset over at MSNBC. He's more interested in elite approval in the global community than he is in what is best for our people right now. If the people are worried, they probably have a pretty good reason to be worried because their government works against their interest in the economy with flooding this country with foreign workers and national security when it tells us, oh, don't worry, 70,000 this year, 100,000 next year. We got it covered, folks. Don't worry.
It needs to stop because the world is watching.
You're listening to the Laura Ingraham Show. David Ignatius at the Washington Post. He's a columnist there. He was on Morning Joe this morning talking about what the governors are doing to the immigrants, how sad it is.
I think that what the president is doing at a time when governors are saying no Syrian immigrants, no Muslim Syrian immigrants, the president is standing up for what he thinks of as America's traditional moral stature and values. Those
Knowing
comments are disturbing to a lot of us.
Us what? They're disturbing to a lot of us elites. They're not disturbing to the American people. American people see the border overrun to the south. They have no confidence that people aren't coming across the northern border. We had a governor on our show a few days ago who told us that he knows for a fact that Syrians have come across the northern border. I think he wishes he hadn't said that because he wasn't supposed to say it to us, but he did. He said for a fact hundreds of Syrians have crossed the Mexican border into Texas. And he did provide evidence for that. We already have people here. We don't need any more. We need a pause on this immigration. We need to stop the immigration into this country from Muslim countries and other countries that we cannot be satisfied have a good handle on this security situation. It's just it's too risky for our people. We have to safeguard America first. And if it means we need a pause in immigration, then we need a pause in immigration. Period. Let's go to Sandra, Florida, line 2. I don't mean to – I think I'm raising my voice here, and that's not very effective. But I am so infuriated about what the president did yesterday. Go ahead, Sandra.
Laura, the anger I feel and hear in your voice is what I've been feeling for the past 6 months. I just want to thank you for keeping it real, keeping it out there, not taking off the spin. I am so angry. And you call your station, you call your program the Healthy Radio Addiction. Oh boy, I don't feel healthy sometimes when I listen to it, but you keep it real. And the antidote to that is to keep my faith stronger than my fear. I just want to thank you so much.
Thank you, Sandra. I appreciate it. Thanks for listening. We'll take all your calls. We've got a board full of calls. People are beyond. I mean, anger doesn't really quite capture it. I think fury. The fury at Washington, the establishment, the status quo needs to be upended. We need a new way forward that is focused on America first. Mike Huckabee will join us in just a matter of moments, but we'll take all your calls. Be patient. I'll get to all of them. We have a lot of new information coming out of France. We'll get to that and a lot more. Don't go away.
What you're hearing from all the governors around the country saying they're not interested in taking refugees from Syria for the foreseeable future. At the very least, it strikes me that we need a pause or a moratorium because the American people are quite concerned and upset about the possibility of terrorists coming into our country through some kind of refugee program.
Our nation has always been welcoming, but we cannot let terrorists take advantage of our compassion. This is a moment where it's better to be safe than to be sorry.
And to that, the president said, "How dare you?" yesterday overseas. Speaking in Manila, the president trashing the governor's response as un-American. This is contrary to American values. See, I thought it was contrary to American values, and you made up a story about a video when you left our ambassador to die in Benghazi. I thought that was contrary to American values, to turn the IRS on the people of this country. I thought it was contrary to American values when you told a lie about Obamacare that you have to have known was a lie. To me, that doesn't seem like it's American at all. To me, that seems more like the behavior of a tyrant than a president. Teresa, line 7, before we get to former Governor Mike Huckabee, his response. He wrote a great letter, by the way, to Paul Ryan that seems to have helped get Ryan off the dime on all of this. Teresa, go ahead.
Laura, thank you so much for your passion on this subject. It's just over the top, and the thing that really blew me away was a Facebook post which had Jesus as a refugee. I don't think Jesus had an ideology that is all for killing the infidel.
Yeah, well, they're going to pull out all stops on this to make the people who are concerned about security look like horrible people. They do the same thing with border enforcement. If you're for border enforcement, you're anti-immigrant. So if you're for stopping this immigration at a time of great national vulnerability, then you are lacking in compassion. You're un-American, as President Obama said yesterday. Un-American. This is the same thing they do on the border. It's the same thing. When you're for traditional marriage, you hate gay people. When you're for stopping these out-of-control protests on college campuses that disrupt people who are actually trying to go there to speak, then you don't like black people. This is their way of shutting down debate, and everybody's tired of it. We're sick of it. We know what you're doing, and we utterly reject your tactics, and we utterly reject your substantive positions on these matters. And this country is going to be taken back. It will be taken back by the people. We've had just about enough. Joining us now, Governor Mike Huckabee, running for the presidency, who I think had a really positive effect on the way this all went down in Congress over the last 36 hours, finally reacting to the people's outrage and flooding this country, first with all these people crossing our border over the last several years, and now with these Syrian refugees whose vetting, frankly, we can't trust. Governor, great to have you on. How are you?
I'm doing great, Laura. Terrific to be on.
So you heard the president. I've never in my life, and I worked for President Reagan, as you know, I have never heard an American president go overseas and sound like a political pundit more so than I did hear him yesterday going after the governor's rightful resistance to more refugees coming into their states.
It was a display of unbelievable arrogance for him to believe that he's right and the rest of the American people are so wrong. I mean, he has this view that his intellect is so superior, his judgment is so incredibly keen, and yet here we are in this most awkward situation where the left-wing socialist, politically correct president of France closes the borders of France, declares war on ISIS, and goes after them, bombing them repeatedly, while our president bombs the American people with insults, because we just maybe don't think it's a great idea to import terrorism to our own shores. And we know this president's administration is incompetent to administer a vetting process because they spent $500 million training 4 Syrian fighters, 4 to resist. That's really a great outcome for $500 million. They gave us the Obamacare website. They gave us Benghazi, the IRS debacle, and the James Rosen investigation, among many other things, whether it's Fast and Furious. I mean, the list goes on and on. But, Laura, my gosh, I've never seen a president so out of touch with the people he's supposed to be leading that even the Washington Post and the New York Times were stunned by his tone deafness to this situation.
We're talking to Governor Mike Huckabee here on the Laura Ingraham Show. To hear President Obama yesterday, we're going to play a soundbite for you. Well, I just want your reaction. We'll play it and get your comment on the other end. Let's listen.
When candidates say we wouldn't admit 3-year-old orphans, that's political posturing. When individuals say that we should have a religious test and that only Christians, proven Christians, should be admitted, that's offensive and contrary to American values.
Isn't it absurd to hear him talking about American values?
Well, it is absurd because sometimes I wonder what values he does espouse. He attacks Christians and goes back 1,000 years and brings up the Crusades, but he can't bring himself to mention the fact that Islamic radicalism is really the very heart, soul, and underpinning of the jihad that's been declared against Western civilization. It's not just France that's in the crosshairs, not just Israel. It's the United States. It's every country that values freedom, the dignity of each person, the value of women. Every country that somehow just doesn't believe that it makes sense to strap bombs to your own child's body and blow him up in the name of religion. There's something incredibly different in that worldview and the worldview that we live under here in Western civilization.
I consider it post-American. Do you concur?
In many ways, yeah, it is post-American because we've always been a people that believed in self-reliance, not government indebtedness. We've always believed that the best of America was if you want to come here, well, then be prepared to grab your bootstraps and pull up and work hard. You'll go somewhere. We have a government that punishes the people that work hard and rewards the people who want the government to take care of them from cradle to grave, like Julia, that the Democrats put forth. It's a crazy, crazy world, but I think we can recover. But we can as long as this president is in his position, because I believe he is completely not only inept, but I believe his ideology is 180 degrees off of what we have to have in this country in order to be the great nation that we've always been.
You wrote a letter to Paul Ryan, and you said if Ryan will not lead and reject the importation of those fleeing the Middle East without assurances, then Speaker Ryan needs to step down and let someone else lead. You said that. Was his response, you heard part of it, was his response acceptable to you? It certainly didn't come with the alacrity that many of us had hoped for, but nevertheless, he now has called for a pause, as has Mitch McConnell in the refugee program. Whether they move to defund the resettlement, we'll have to see that.
Well, Laura, I was happy that he addressed it because the original indications were that he was going to say, yeah, we can take so many refugees, we'll make a deal. And I'm thinking, no, there's no time to make a deal here. This president has thrown down the gauntlet. This president has completely insulted the American people. He's run over the governors who are duly elected to lead their states. I was especially offended by his attitude toward governors because, Obama's not going to be dealing with these people in his neighborhood. He has armed guards around him. These people aren't going to be relocated to Gracie Mansion in New York with de Blasio. They're not going to be in the Upper West Side of Manhattan. They're not going to be in Hollywood. They're not going to be in Georgetown. They're not going to be in Chappaqua. They're going to be in neighborhoods and communities that aren't gated. These are people that we have no idea who they are, where they've come from. Am I sympathetic toward widows and orphans? Of course I am. But my gosh, let's send money to Franklin Graham and Samaritan's Purse, a wonderful organization.
Yeah,
let's put refugee camps in Saudi Arabia. Let's build them there. Tell the Saudis, we're tired of you guys offering this very generous, we'll build 8 mosques in Germany. Saudis have gotten obscenely rich off America. It's time for them to step up and do something more than continuing to fund madrasas that train terrorists. So let's build a refugee camp. Let's help people, but let's don't bring them 8,000 miles from their home. Let's keep them in their neighborhood, and let's remember the reason they're refugees is because this president has had no capacity to lead and bring any stability to the Middle East. He's botched every situation in the Middle East, from Egypt to Yemen to Iran to Iraq to Syria.
Well, he says the
no
response that you're
failures.
outlining, Governor, he said the response that you're outlining feeds the ISIL narrative. That we somehow don't want these people coming into the country. It feeds their narrative of America and is essentially a recruitment tool, is what he said yesterday about the Republican candidates and governors.
Laura, I don't give a rat's rear about what ISIS thinks. I know what they think. They think they want to kill us all. They want to murder us. They want to blow us up. Look what happened in the carnage in the streets of France. That's what ISIS thinks. I think that ISIS is a malignant tumor, and with a benign tumor, you can contain a benign tumor. This isn't benign. There's nothing to contain. And the president was so incredibly, unbelievably wrong when he said we've contained ISIS, and 9 hours later, bombs and bullets are going off in Paris, killing 127 people. So let's be real clear. With a malignant tumor, you eradicate it. Then you radiate the area around it, and you make sure it doesn't come back. that's how we deal with ISIS and what they think about us? Do I care? Absolutely not. I care that my grandchildren are going to sleep well at night, knowing that we're not importing people to come in and kill them, and doing everything we can to try to make this country safe. The number one duty of the American president is to protect America, not the reputation of Islam.
There seems to be a narrative out there that I see developing, Governor Huckabee, among some, where they believe that this crisis boosts the candidacy of people like Jeb Bush and hurts the candidacy of others. I mean, you're not really mentioned in the others, but people like Carson, maybe Trump. But there was a conversation on Morning Joe today between Mark Halperin and Joe Scarborough about Jeb and his recent interview, and you'll get the sense of it when I play it for you. Let's listen.
Your interview with Jeb Bush yesterday, who handled every single question in a way, I've got to say, that actually makes him not only lap Marco Rubio, but everybody else in the field.
Jeb Bush was,
and you said as much.
He was extraordinarily impressive. We talked to him for 25 minutes or so, and he answered every question fluidly with a lot of detail and a lot of heart too, not just memorized talking points. And Dr. Carson can't do that, but he is appealing to people on a different basis than that.
Do you see an opening for the return of the Bush ideology and combating Islamic jihadism?
Well, I think perhaps maybe with the chattering class. Look, Jeb is my friend, and I'm not saying anything unkind about him. We've been friends a long time, and I like Jeb. But the fact that Mark Halperin and the people sitting around the table in New York are giving him great praise is not necessarily going to ring true with Republican primary voters that are ultimately going to select the nominee. I'm always a little worried if I have too much love from the folks who live in the bubbles of Washington, New York, and Hollywood, because I'm pretty sure that they're not in the same kind of synchronization with the people that I rub shoulders with every day in Iowa, South Carolina, across the middle of the United States. People that know that these refugees are going to be coming to their neighborhoods, and that they're going to have to deal with the issues of how are we going to educate them, how are we going to take care of their health care needs, where are they going to be housed. I guarantee you that the folks sitting around that table at MSNBC know that no refugees are going to be living next door to them. They just aren't.
No, of course not.
And Hillary Clinton knows they're not coming to Chappaqua.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. Or you know what? I had an idea, Governor, that we should bring the refugees in, but they should only be brought into Martha's Vineyard. So if they go to Martha's Vineyard, then that we can kind of probably keep an eye on them there, and that would just probably that would probably affect the elites a lot more seriously than bringing them to places like Arkansas or down to Georgia, Louisiana. But bring them to Martha's Vineyard, like, well, we have to reconsider this. This seems like a rash policy of bringing these people here.
You know, you've got a great idea, because it's much easier to kind of keep an eye on people. It's a little more contained, and it's a lovely place, and it's an absolutely delightful place to be. I think, we should appoint Laura Ingraham to head up the Syrian refugee situation and the location efforts in the United States. And I imagine you can pick that and a few other delightful neighborhoods, and we'll see nothing but applause and smiles all around the table from the folks sitting at the Washington Post and the New York Times and the other places.
That all go there for their vacations, Governor. It's great having you on. We love having you on. Nice work and jump-starting the efforts in Congress. I think you had a huge effect on that. Governor Mike Huckabee, best of luck out there. We'll take a break. Don't go away. Yeah, Trump's over on the other side. The other side of the establishment. That's Adele's new single from her new Smash album, of course. Hello. And Trump he just popped into the Adele concert in Manhattan last night. I didn't even know she was in Manhattan. They said he cut the line. Was there a barricade? You have to fortify that border if Trump's coming in. Tonight I'll be on Greta. Check it out. On Life's Zet, Rubio's flip-flop on amnesty. What does that say about his future in the GOP? And Americans fretting about the future big time.
Your health healthy. Radio Addiction starts now.
Power to the people!
The Laura Ingraham Show.
If I could believe, I'd hit my knees and pray. But baby, I just don't know what to say.
There's something different about what happened from Charlie Hebdo. And I think everybody would feel that. There was a sort of particularized focus and perhaps even a legitimacy in terms of, not a legitimacy, but a rationale that you could attach yourself to somehow and say, okay, they're really angry because of this or that.
He needs to get some sleep and shut up is what he needs. That's disgraceful. For the Secretary of State of the United States to stand up and say that there's some rationale for what happened in January, these are the kind of weak, mixed signals that this administration sends that helps to really, make the American people think that there's no one watching the store. And there isn't.
Chris Christie just eviscerating John Kerry. Kerry is just, at this point, you can't use the word legitimate at any point in time. You just can't say legitimate. Okay, you can't use the word legitimate when it comes to murdering innocents. You just can't do it. As we have thousands pouring into Greece today, more refugees coming into the European Union, as a female suicide bomber blew herself up after being involved in a raid in St. Denis, which is a very interesting community, about 180,000 people in St. Denis, and it was a medieval town community with a beautiful Gothic cathedral, and I've been there. It's spectacularly beautiful, but now a very large Muslim population. France had opened its doors to all these Muslims from former French territories, of course, in Algeria and so forth, have come into France and have settled. There have been, remember just a few years ago, all of the big protests, the cars set on fire. Remember all the protests in the Muslim neighborhoods in France? We covered this day in and day out for weeks on the Laura Ingraham Show. And we warned people that the pot was going to boil over. Multiculturalism sounds good, but in many cases it just does not work because people have really different worldviews, and there's a grievance culture that is fed by the way, frankly, a lot of these liberal, progressive French leaders, what they did and how they address these problems. They coddle people instead of having a law and order approach and frankly, controlling its own immigration. France just didn't do that, didn't want to do that. And now a lot of people think it's too late. You got 6 million Muslims in France. In this raid today, it was brutal. We had 7 people arrested, 2 dead, police dog dead, and, well, yeah, I'm sure they didn't like the fact that a dog was sent in to flush them out. They don't like dogs. They hate dogs. They shoot dogs. The dog was killed. And we keep hearing from President Obama, oh, you want to keep out women and children. Well, one of the women blew herself up and would have killed all of those French police officers if she could have. What's underneath that burqa, baby? What's underneath the burqa? Yeah, you got to lift her up, make sure we see what's underneath the burqa.
We all know, because we are following the threat streams, that any individual who wants to strap a suicide vest around them can walk into any public event in most places in the world and blow him or herself up and destroy people with them.
Oh, that's Lurch is, well, he's lurching to absolute irrelevancy. And this is what we know from our dealings with John Kerry. Again, he's more of a citizen of the world. He speaks impeccable French. His wife speaks, obviously, his wife is French. And Kerry is no different from Obama in most, except he served his country in uniform. But he's going to say the same thing. Of course. Oh, really? People can actually blow themselves up. You're kidding me. Thank you for that information, because I didn't know that otherwise. Jim in Florida, line 8, been on hold for too long. Jim, go ahead, my friend.
That's okay. I've enjoyed it. Laura, I had two things real quick. One is I think that because of our president's inability and ignorance, stupidity, whatever you want to call it, immaturity, I think that in itself is the biggest ISIS recruitment tool, is they look and they see how incompetent we are and how weak we are. I think that's the bigger tool than anything that anybody running for president could say. And number two, because he likes to lead from behind so much, and I mean way behind, I think what we ought to do is give him a participation ribbon.
Yeah, he gets a trophy for just showing up in the Philippines. And he shows up in Turkey. And occasionally he speaks to Republicans, but that's very rare. So he gets a participation medal. Yeah, well, that means he should turn in that Nobel Peace Prize. I can't believe someone hasn't come to reclaim that yet. That should be repossessed. The Nobel Peace Prize, the Middle East is on fire, and Paris is in lockdown mode right now. He gets a Nobel Peace Prize. Oh, my God. Either shut down Oslo altogether, and the whole process of Nobel Peace Prizes, the whole thing seems to be quite irrelevant. The police found a cell phone, which ultimately gave them information that they could use to raid this particular apartment in Saint Denis neighborhood in Paris. And 180,000 people in that community, majority now Muslim population. And we saw, video that has been now released by authorities in France of how that raid went down. Amazing. As the president goes overseas, I want to play this for you, Mike, in case people didn't hear last hour where I think I popped a vein. I was so mad. The president goes over to the Philippines, and instead of taking the fight to the terrorists, rhetorically, he takes the fight to American governors. Let's listen.
When candidates say we wouldn't admit 3-year-old orphans, that's political posturing. When
you never do that, sir.
Individuals say that we should have a religious test and that only Christians, proven Christians,
listen how he says
should be
Christians.
admitted. That's offensive and contrary to American values. I cannot think of a more potent recruitment tool for ISIL.
You notice when he says Christians, it's very the way he says it is very derisive.
Only Christians, proven Christians.
Only Christians, proven. Remember the other thing about the Crusades he brought up a few months ago? I mean, he's just always this very hardly any conversation from this White House about what's been done to Christians in the Middle East. He'll throw in a reference to the Yazidis every now and then, but the Christians get very little attention. Very little. I mean, he's talked more about the plight of the transgender community in the United States and the plight of the hundreds of thousands of Christians who have been brutalized, driven from their homes, Christian children beheaded. We got nothing. We got very little commentary about this.
It was fairly extraordinary. The president overseas in the middle of this international crisis making jokes about Republican debate moderators and 3-year-old orphans. Maybe we're in a new territory. Maybe I'm cynical because I've been a member of Congress, but I always expect certain members of Congress to, quote, pop off and say really stupid things. I don't expect the commander-in-chief to do this.
You're listening to the Laura Ingraham Show. Who is the better recruitment tool, or what is the better recruitment tool for Daesh, the new way we're referring to ISIS? Is it a weak president who attacks his own people when he's overseas? Laughed at by Vladimir Putin? Laughed at. We're the laughingstock of the world. Or Republican governors standing up for their own states? These people respect strength. They don't respect leaders who don't look out for their own people. They respect strength. And they will seek to exploit any avenue of weakness. They crave weakness in their adversaries, because a weak adversary means Daesh can be on the move, can make inroads, can cross your borders, can attend your schools, can operate within the normal channels of business. And now we had 2 planes diverted to Paris from Los Angeles. One landed in Nova Scotia, another landed, I believe, in Colorado. Passengers uncomfortable. Salt Lake City. Passengers uncomfortable. We're going to get more details about why the passengers were uncomfortable about, I guess, Middle Eastern passengers. Do you watch more closely now? Or do you have everyone seemed to be on alert after 9/11, then that went away. Everyone just got complacent. But do you watch more closely? Are you more alert? And are you hesitant about speaking out because you're afraid of being called anti-Muslim? 855-40-LAURA. We'll take a break, get your reaction, and a lot more. John Kerry absolutely makes a total horses behind of himself overseas as the president turns into just another community organizer, or brings on the full Bill Ayers when he's in the Philippines. Your reaction to all this coming up.
Well, you're never gonna get it. Tell me what's that for?
Perhaps even a legitimacy in terms of not legitimacy, but
Secretary Kerry has a history when he's tired, in particular, at the hurdles around the world of speaking imprecisely, and now's just not a time for any leader to be speaking imprecisely.
He needs to get some sleep and shut up.
The Laura Ingraham Show.
You talk too much, you worry me to death.
This rhetoric that we see from Republican candidates for president, and even some from Republican members of Congress who are offering up legislation suggesting that somehow we should put a halt to our refugee program. The fact of the matter is, legislation like that is much more focused on politics than it is national security. And so if you want the commander-in-chief and the president of the United States to be focused on doing what's in the national security interest of the United States, the president believes clearly that rhetoric, like we're seeing from the Republican side, only serves the ISIL argument.
You're listening to the Laura Ingraham Show. I can't even hear these sound bites. I don't even want to hear them. I don't hear Josh Earnest. I don't hear these people. I don't even know who they are. Ben Rhodes. They're all full of you-know-what. I don't want to hear them talking about the American interest when they've been spending 7 years against the American interest. Post-American, they think the old way of doing things, they think American exceptionalism is overrated. Everybody's exceptional, so America can't be that exceptional. So now they're overseas saying that we're against American values when you spent the last 7 undermining them? Get out of town. Go own an NBA team and see how that approach works in the NBA where merit actually matters. These people, I wouldn't hire these people to walk my dog, let alone run part of my business. Absolute buffoons. I'm sorry. I'm going to just be blunt. Let's go to Jen, Texas, line 5. Jen, tell me you did not vote for John Kerry. You voted for Kerry?
This is Janet.
Okay, yeah, Janet, go ahead. You voted for John Kerry?
Yes, I lived in Massachusetts half of my life, and first of all, I need to say, I always voted for the person, not the party. The first senator I had to vote for, I voted for Ed Brooke. He was a Republican.
All right, well, look, we accept your apology. Let's go to Steve, Virginia, line 6. Steve.
I think Obama and the Democrats are creating the perfect storm for Republicans in 2016. Bush gave us Obama. Now Obama is going to give us Trump or Cruz, in my mind.
I think people have had just about enough. That's a good point, Steve. I'm glad you raised this. My question to everybody is, do you think the events in Paris and the events with this refugee push into the United States, does this help Jeb Bush? Does this help Bush? Does this make you want to vote for Jeb Bush? That's a simple question. We're going to get the whole board lit up on this, Mike, because that's what they're pushing now. Did you hear that little exchange with Scarborough and Mark Halperin? And then there was a follow-on point today by Michael Steele, former RNC chief. Michael Steele commented on this as well, that we need experience. But people like Ben Carson, he's going to go down.
The country doesn't need someone to be on a learning curve. You need to have an understanding, at least at a visceral level, of what you need to do here as President of the United States. And look, January of 2017 waits for no one. You step into that office the first day, they give you that national security briefing. You'd better be prepared to make that first phone call to your Arab allies or whoever you decide you need to speak to.
Well, I think that Carson suffered from that comment on Fox News Sunday, no doubt about it. He's gone down in the polls. A new poll that just came out today, 31% Donald Trump, This is I think this is the rolling average. Drew will hand it to me. I have 50,000 polls in front of me. Right, that's exactly right. 36%, the rolling Reuters poll, 5-day average, 36%. Carson's down at 14%. That's not good. And then Rubio's at 11, Cruz is at 7.9. And then the New Hampshire poll, Trump at 23, up 5 points. Oh, I guess those comments about Carson really hurt him in New Hampshire. Jeez. Carson's down 3 points in New Hampshire. Rubio, 13. Cruz is up 2. Rubio's at 13. Christie is at 6. Jeb Bush is not even in the top 6. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, Jeb Bush is not even in the top 7 candidates in New Hampshire. Jeb Bush has got to get. I mean, I'm of two minds. I kind of like the fact that Jeb Bush is in the race because we're just reminded why we don't want another Bush, and we don't go down the Bush road. It gives us again. This is a reference point. This is what we don't want, contrary to what the elites were saying on MSNBC today. Simple question: does this make you want to give Bush a second look? Paris and the refugee issue. Yes or no? 855-40-LAURA. Let's go to Chris, Kansas, line 3. Chris.
Hi, Laura. Yeah, I think right now we have Nero fiddling while Rome burns. I think we're going to be hit hard. Watching TV last night, it hit me that the groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda like to pick dates and things. I think Black Friday would be the perfect date for them. And I think I'll make a bold prediction that an easy target, they could go into malls everywhere, set off bombs, kill people, something like that. I hope to God.
Chris, you don't have any basis in saying that. No, I'm not trying to, dismiss your points, but yeah, they could hit us anytime. We have no idea. Yeah, we have no idea when they're going to hit. No one has any. We said this after 9/11. It's going to be another attack in the next 2 weeks. It didn't happen, right? The thing is, this is unpredictable. We don't know what's going to happen, which is why we have to control our own borders. We have no idea. But even if I'm going to say this too, even if it weren't for these Islamic freaks trying to wreak havoc upon civilization, coming after the Crusaders, what they said in their claim of responsibility, Drew will print that out for me, because what they said in it was that they are expanding their influence. I mean, some of this is just puffing themselves up, but they did take a jetliner down. I mean, they have proven themselves to be pretty crafty. They have evaded all these border checks. They have gotten into France from Greece up through Macedonia and then into France and Serbia. So they did manage to get into these places. But they kind of warned us. They said what they were going to do, but we just don't know the time. 855-40-LAURA. Sarah Palin's going to join us. She has a new book out. Talk to her about what she thinks. Lou Pereira is going to stop by, Disney worker who was forced to train his foreign worker replacement. Talk about un-American or contrary to American values. Gutting the American workforce for foreign workers. That's pretty anti-American, don't you think? Don't go away.
You know, if you're really digging this show and you want to find out more, like behind-the-scenes stuff or a few secrets that never hit the air?
No. Yes.
You can do it by following us at Podcast One on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. That's at Podcast ONE. If you do that, you'll stay up to date between all the episodes and get a look behind the scenes. You'll get photos, videos, extras, and a whole lot more. So join the Podcast One community on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Just follow us at Podcast One. That's at Podcast ONE. And don't forget to tag us or use the hashtag Podcast One so we can write back to you.
How do you deal with that war weariness? How do you muster the kind of public support that would be necessary for an aggressive action against ISIS? How do you get over that war weariness in America?
I think you have to give people a sense that there's a clear strategy, that we're not doing this incrementally, that we're not going to be stuck in a quagmire, that if we do it, we're doing it with all the resources that we can bring to bear and the international community with us, and that we're quick and decisive, and then we move on.
Quick and decisive, and then we move on. Sounds like Trump a little bit. That doesn't sound like George W. Bush being there for 11 years, 12 years. Sounds like pinprick strikes or quick strikes. Well, we thought when we were going to Iraq would be there for a couple of years. Then it turns out, oh no, we can't leave. Have to leave a residual force. Can't leave. 10 years later, now we have people back in Iraq. So does that make you like Bush all the more? Is he now going to be taken more seriously? These polls indicate no. These polls are a disaster for him. Oh, no, he is at 7%. He's at 7% in New Hampshire, so he's in the top 1, 2, 3, 4. He's in the top 5. I was remiss in not stating that earlier. I want to correct that. So he's at 7% with John Kasich in New Hampshire. Oh, we forgot to say that Bobby Jindal dropped out. Where are his 200 supporters going to go now? Will they go to Trump? That's so mean. I like Bobby. I'm sorry, I do like Bobby Jindal. He was too mean to Trump, though. How did that Trump strategy work out for Jindal? I'm going to go after these. Didn't he call him? What did he call him? A sociopath? Or I think we should have just the murderers row list. We got to get Perry, then we got to get Jindal, and then anyone else who was attacking Trump. See what happens to their political future. It's just not a. You see Cruz isn't going anywhere near Trump. Cruz is smart. He's not talking about that at all. Jeb's down at 7%. Cruz is just like, I'm not talking about that. In fact, I agree with Donald Trump. Just like Donald Trump's my friend. At least you don't find yourself dropping out of the race. In just a moment, the Disney worker who had to train his foreign replacement and the lawyer who's helping all of these Americans who are being subject to the ultimate humiliation of training their foreign worker replacement. You will not believe their story coming up in just one moment on the Laura Ingraham Show. Charles in Jacksonville, Florida. I mean, he led your state, Charles, in Jacksonville, and the whole state. He led the state, and he was a popular governor. Now, how can you possibly say that Jeb is not the answer?
He's just an establishment of a Republican, and we have already seen what the Bushes can do in office, and that is not what this country needs right now. We need somebody that can keep his word and knows how to negotiate and take care of business.
So who's that?
Donald Trump.
Did you vote for Bush before when he was running for governor? Did you vote for him back in 2002?
No, I didn't.
Who'd you vote for?
Actually, I was living in Georgia at that time.
Okay, I was saying that. I was going to say, that doesn't sound like a Jacksonville accent to me. All right. My spidey senses went up there. I appreciate it, Charles, another Trump supporter. Let's go to Phil, Lincoln, Nebraska, line 6. Phil.
Hey, I think a couple weeks ago you did an informal poll on the most important issue to folks, and I think it was overwhelming that immigration was the main issue. You know, that just points with this ISIS stuff, it points right to the same issue. That's why you don't see him being the answer to all these people. Like you just said in that last call, it's going to be immigration, and that's just what it is. It's going to be the most important thing. Big Carson, maybe not so much, but I think Trump, Cruz, those are going to be your guys that are going to be the toughest on that.
That keeps coming up. Trump, Cruz. I think Carson's. I God bless Carson. I know a lot of you like Carson. Carson's not going to be the nominee. I've said this for how long? A year? He's not going to be the nominee. I like him. He's not going to be the nominee. It's just not. It's not going to happen. And he's not as tough on immigration as all these other, the Cruz and Trump. No way. How did that Marco Rubio push to sit down with Chuck Schumer work out? Who tried to tell him not to do it? When I had him on the show, I said, please don't divide the Republican Party on immigration. Please. When I had him on O'Reilly when I was hosting, I said, please don't divide the party. When we were on Fox, we were just watching that the other day, back in 2013. It was like, please don't divide the party. This is going to be the most divisive issue that you could start stirring up in the party. And what did he do? He listened to Lindsey Graham. He listened to McCain, Jeff Flake at the Chamber of Commerce. And he got himself in a heap of trouble politically, and he's not recovered from it.
I resent that.
Oh, sorry, Senator. I mean, I like you as people, but this was a fool's errand you went on. Joining us now, I'm delighted they're with us. Lou Pereiro is a 20-year veteran of the IT field and a former employee of Disney. Sarah Blackwell is a litigation attorney. She owns ProtectUSWorkers.com and has offered her services to American workers who find themselves replaced by foreign workers and having to train, in the case of Disney, their foreign worker replacements. Sarah and Leo, thanks for joining us. It's great to have you on.
You're welcome, Laura. Thanks for having us.
So, Leo, tell us about that day, the first day you were told that you would be replaced by a foreign worker. Just go back and review that for us.
Sure. Well, it goes back to early of 2014 when the Theme Parks and Resorts Division of Disney named a new CIO. His name is Tilak Mendadi, and he has deep roots in South Asia. He came to Disney from American Express and Enron prior to that. So early in October of 2014, I was having a fairly good month, I thought. For one, I received the highest possible performance review by my management. And I also heard from the CEO of Disney, Bob Iger, that company profits for the last quarter were up 20%. This was a record-breaking profit of just one among a series of like 6 quarterly profits in a row. So later that same month, just as the holiday season was coming to a start in 2014, I was driving into the office towards the huge 40-square-mile Disney campus in Orlando, and I got a meeting invitation at the last moment. I was really surprised because it was from an executive that I very rarely hear from, if ever. And so I just made it, I had to make sure that I was, to the office on time because it was a last-minute meeting by a really prominent person. So I walked into a conference room with this Disney executive. It was an early morning, and as I entered the room, there was about 24 others crowded into this conference room. Some of them were from my team, others were from different areas. I noticed that several of them actually had the Disney badge proudly displayed on their shirts, which meant that they were above and beyond as employees, as recognized by the company. Normally when you visit the parks, you'll notice that people will have a white tag with their name on it. These had blue tags, which meant that they were just stellar employees because of their service to the company.
Okay, we got to get right to the point here, though, Leo. We got to right to the point. So again, let's try to speed it along, because we have a lot of other questions we got to get to. So how did it go down?
No problem. Okay, so this Disney executive made the harsh announcement that I had 90 days to train my foreign replacement. If I didn't train my foreign replacement, I wouldn't get a bonus that I was offered. They said that there was going to be 30-day periods, increments, and so the first 30 days I had to train the person that sat at my desk right next to me, and they documented everything that I did. So they recorded the video that I did, they recorded the audio that I did, and everything that I did was regurgitated to me the next day.
Were they Indian workers? Where are they from?
They were South Asian. Yes, I presume they were from India. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Bangladesh.
So the next 30 days, I worked alongside this person, and they started taking over some of the things that I did daily.
Yeah.
And then the last 30 days were the most humiliating, which is where they pretty much took over everything that I did. However, they were much less skilled and didn't have the knowledge or experience than I did. So I pretty much the last 30 days sat back and watched them completely take over my job. And at that point, I was told that I had to turn in my company laptop, my company badge, and I was, out the door, and that was the end of my job.
Was
so that
there
was a 90-day period.
Yeah, was there any sense from any of the upper echelon there at Disney that they regretted this, that they were really sad about this, but they had to do it for cost-cutting measures? What was the conversation like?
Well, the conversation was pretty much all corporate speak, which is we're getting more agile, we're getting more efficient, we're using managed service providers. Managed service provider means your foreign replacement company is going to come over and take over what you do, and they're going to do it for less money.
Right. So
that's really what it boiled down to.
Yeah, and so they're doing the work overseas, right? They're not in the United States.
Well, no, these were people on an H-1B visa program. I didn't know this. I've been in the industry for 20 years. I didn't know it was possible to bring somebody in physically, sit at your desk, take over your mouse and your keyboard and your chair, and you're out the door. I didn't know this was possible.
This is shameful. Absolutely shameful that our government allows this to happen. Sarah Blackwell, I want to get to you here. People who hear the term STEM workers, they think, it's a highly specialized knowledge that Americans just don't have. Somehow we don't have any knowledge to do STEM jobs, and that it's only a small sliver of highly specialized workers that would ever be filled by these specialized foreign super-duper people in other countries. But the truth is something very different.
Right. They are saying that there's not enough qualified Americans to do the job. The problem with that is there are qualified people doing the job, and they're being fired after, like, all of the Disney workers that I represent and all the ones I've spoken to about this issue, they all have evaluations that they've been doing the best job for 10 to 15 years, so they were not unqualified for the job. The other thing is, if they really believe, if the people who are arguing that the Americans are not qualified for the job, why don't we qualify our Americans? I don't believe it. I think there are Americans that are qualified for all of these jobs, but if your argument and you really believe Americans are not qualified for the job, then why is that? Let's put the money in our education.
Right.
Let's train our Americans. Let's not train these Indians or these foreigners on H-1Bs. Let's train our Americans to do the job. And if you go to a politician like Rubio and you say, you know what, I'm sorry, you're not qualified to do your job, Rubio, as a senator. We're replacing you by this foreigner on an H-1B, and you know what, we need you to train him. He would go crazy. That's absurd. And it's going on all over the country. To thousands of Americans are being displaced right now, thousands. In New York Life, there's 12 to 1,400 people training their replacements right now. Southern Edison, California, 500 training them right now. I could name you 15, 20 companies across the nation where the people are calling me from the inside saying, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm training, this is when I'm getting fired. So it's happening all over the country, and it's not it's not Indians or foreigners coming in and saying, hey, I'm the only one that can do this job. It's just a matter of saving money for these
so
greedy corporate.
What do you say to Paul Ryan and Rubio and all these people who wanted to increase the number of H-1B visas into the country, and that they've done big fundraisers in Silicon Valley, and Zuckerberg and the whole crowd. They just want to streamline these H-1B visas. They want to have no caps, and in the new TPP agreement, the new Trans-Pacific Partnership, they'll be able to bring in limitless L1 visa workers if foreign companies come here and set up shop. They'll be able to bring in all their foreign workers.
Right. Well, I would tell them, number one, that the future of America is gone, because what's happening is only 26% of college graduates in the IT field in America are actually getting jobs.
20%.
And even those who get jobs,
20%.
26%. 20%? Yeah. So then they don't have jobs. The 20% that's getting jobs, there's no job security there, and the salaries are the same as they were back in 2010 or before. The competition for Americans, based on what's going on, it's ruining the competitions for Americans and the companies that have to compete. Disney's different because it's a big, entertainment system. But if you talk about a company that has 5 different competitors in the same area, and they start hiring these H-1Bs through these contract companies, then they can lower their prices for the consumer. And then what are the other 4 going to do? The other 4 are required to do the same thing.
So it's a never-ending vicious cycle of outsourcing American jobs to foreign workers. And what it says, and I'll let you close it out, Leo, what it says to the American people is you're expendable. The American workforce, you're expendable. So you're not only competing against other Americans for jobs, you're competing against the world. And the world can pay a lot less because they'll live 12 in a house. They can go home with the money they make, and they'll be ultimately very well off in India or Bangladesh. And so it's pretty much a wanted poster for the American worker. We want you to show up, and then we're going to take your jobs. Leo, you can close it out very quickly.
Yes. Our lawmakers need to take action immediately. 1 out of 2 new IT jobs is filled by a foreign guest worker. Job ads have been found on Dice and Monster that clearly only H-1B workers apply. In other words, if you're a U.S. citizen, don't bother applying.
Leo and Sarah Blackwell, protectusworkers.com. Leo Pereiro, thank you for being a whistleblower for the truth, Leo. We salute you. Sarah, you're doing God's work. Thanks so much. We'll take a break. On Life's Zet, How Reagan Would Handle Paris by Craig Shirley, the must-read for today. How Reagan would handle Paris. We'll get into that coming up. And working mothers have more successful daughters and more caring sons, says a new study. Is that really true? We'll talk about it.
Thanks for listening to the Laura Ingraham Show podcast. Download new episodes every week at podcastone.com. That's podcastone.com. Stay tuned for the latest AP News headlines from Podcast One, right after this.
AP Update. I'm Tim McGuire. A pre-dawn raid on an apartment in a Paris suburb. The AP's Raphael Sauter lives in that neighborhood.
This began with hundreds and hundreds of gunshots early this morning and explosions. And there was a renewed attack involving 7 explosions of some sort at around 7:30 this morning as well. However, the end of the raid went by with barely a sound at all.
Others say the firing and explosions lasted for more than an hour. 2 people are dead, including a woman who blew herself up. 4 police officers were slightly injured, and a SWAT team police dog was killed in the operation. 7 people have been taken into custody. French officials will not say if one of those arrested or the dead man was the mastermind behind last Friday's attacks in Paris that left 129 people dead. AP Update. I'm Tim McGuire.